Hello and welcome back to Kitchen Voyeur. This is the whole cooking series with Evan Hendricks. In today's episode, we have Knife Skills 101, not 201 or 301. This is 101. So no advanced knife skills. We're not going to do any paring, anything like that. But we do want to show you how to julienne and dice and things. So I see 3 knives out here for us today. Can you tell us a little bit about why these knives?
Absolutely. So I think you can boil all of knife skills. Anything pretty much you need to do in the kitchen, you can do with these 3 knives. And so I like to tell people, get yourself a good paring knife, a good Santoku, good chef's knife. We'll walk through each one. So first, paring knife, very small knife. It's really not meant to do a lot of prep work in the kitchen, but when you need it, you need it. And one of the things that's very, very convenient is you take a paring knife. It's meant to be handheld and usually something held in your other hand. And for example, we want to take the stem out of these button mushroom caps, and we're just going to put the point of our knife right down in and just carve out the stem just like that. So something that would be very, very hard to do with the Santoku or the chef's knife, paring knife makes it very, very simple. So dicing up pears, dicing up apples, taking the tops off of strawberries, very simple, small little tasks, but when you need it, you need it. So don't discount the use of a good paring knife. The next one I want to jump to is the chef's knife. Now this is the most common knife you find in kitchens. Every knife set across the world comes with a chef's knife. And there's a reason. This is a workhorse in the kitchen. So whether you're breaking down a chicken or you're dicing up an onion, this guy can do the job for you. You'll notice that the edge of the blade tips up at the end, and that's so that you can have a really nice rocking motion. Makes it very, very easy to use in the kitchen. But the other thing you'll notice that separates it out from the Santoku that we'll talk about in a second is the hilt of the knife, the back of the knife is a little bit thicker. And there's a reason for that. It gives the knife a little bit more weight so that as you're chopping a multiple ingredients, you don't get what's called knife fatigue. So your hand is getting tired from handling a knife. The other thing that makes it really, really convenient is that because of the thickness of the blade, it holds a sharpness edge a little bit longer. And I'll show you what's really convenient with the chef's knife. Something like a carrot that can be a little bit harder to get through, a chef's knife will just kind of push right through it. Wider back allows you to put your hand on the back, slice through it, and then we can just do a rough chop, coming right down through. And you'll notice I'm keeping my fingers away from the blade here. I'm not in real tight, and that's just because we're doing a rough chop. It's not a lot of finish, precise work. So that's your chef's knife. The Santoku is the last one I want to talk about. Now this is my personal favorite knife. I use this every day in the kitchen, and it's the one that most commonly is found in my hand. A couple of differences between this and the chef's knife. The first thing you'll notice is that the bottom of the knife stays fairly flat and the top kind of hooks down, so it has a much flatter cutting surface, so it can be a little bit trickier to get that rocking motion, but it's more of a slicing knife, so it's meant to kind of go up and down versus the rocking motion. And I'll show you what we're talking about. So with a bell pepper that we want to julienne, which is to cut in thin strips, which you'll see those recipes, it'll say julienne a bell pepper, and what does julienne mean? So for us, it just means cutting in thin strips, but we're gonna put our fingers right up close to it and curve our fingers in a little bit so that the knife is actually resting against our knuckles so we don't end up cutting off our fingertips. And then we're just doing a very simple kind of rocking motion, but more slicing straight down through the bell pepper to create nice, even strips. The other thing I really like a Santoku for is slicing up onions, which can be really, really tricky. Sometimes you slice right through it, and then you try to figure out, how do I turn this into a small dice? Can I go through it individually? But then you end up with some long strips sometimes. So my favorite way to cut up an onion is to not cut off the root end of the onion. It will end up holding everything for you. It's like a second set of hands on the back side. So we'll slice down through the onion and make sure the tip hits the cutting board, but we're not going through the back of the onion, the root end of the onion. And so once we slice down all the way through, then we'll make one slice, crosshatch right through the middle. Again, making sure we don't go through the root end. And then when we come down through in our slicing motion, we end up with a really nice small dice on our onion.
That's beautiful. I will definitely use that technique next time.
The last thing I want to point out, a really, really slick trick you can do in the kitchen is, how do we peel garlic, right? How do we crush and peel garlic? The easiest thing you can do is take your knife and just put it flat side down And then we're gonna hit it with the heel of our hand, which I know a lot of people think sounds really, really dangerous. It can be if you don't use the right technique, so we wanna pay attention. But you're putting the blade down, and then we're actually gonna hit the back side of the knife here, and we're gonna push it away from us so that we don't hit the blade. And we're just gonna crush the garlic a little bit. And when we do that, you'll notice that the peel just comes right off the garlic.
It shells right out, yeah.
Don't need any of those fancy kitchen gadgets they're always trying to sell you on television, right?
Right.
Because you already have a knife. The one other thing I think you were interested in was how do we keep our edges sharp, right?
Yes.
So, a couple of things we want to point out here. This comes with just about every knife set you buy on the market. This is called a kitchen steel or a knife steel. It's used for honing our knives, not sharpening our knives. We're honing our knives. The difference here is that the edge of our knife comes to a point, okay? And at the tip of the point, it's very, very, very thin, and that edge is called a burr. Now the burr, as we're using our knife and hitting a cutting board, which is a hard surface, the burr will actually bend over. And now we're cutting with a rounded edge. So we want to straighten that, realign that burr, and that's what a steel does. And it's a very simple process of putting your knife at about a 20-degree angle and just pulling it down the edge of the steel and going back and forth each side. And now our burr's realigned and our knife is sharp again, but we didn't sharpen it, we just honed it. A sharpener, I only use about every 6 months or so, and I use my knives a lot. And so a sharpener is actually gonna be grinding the edge of your knife down. So if you use a sharpener too much, you're actually gonna grind your knife away in just a matter of months. So you only need to sharpen once every 6 months, once a year even sometimes for people if you don't use your knives a lot, but we need to hone every day.
I think that does it. There you have it. We were keeping it real today. This is a real kitchen with real people, real food, real kids in the background, real dogs. Just to reiterate, the one thing you want to do is hone your knives every day and not over sharpen them or wear them down, and use a variety for specific techniques as we've shown you here. So that's it for today. This is Kitchen Voyeur. This was Knife Skills 101. We'll see you next time for more tips and tricks.